and introduce our speaker today. We're kind of having more of a moderated forum today, so it's going to be an open Q&A. So if at any point in time, if anybody has an additional question you would like to kind of ask, please feel free to raise your hand, and we'll try our best to kind of get to you in the middle of the conversation. But I personally like it. I feel like it's a bit more involved rather than us versus you kind of on the stage. It's a great way to have a bit more of a dialogue. So I like to call it more of a forum. But yeah, with that being said, please welcome Devin McGovern, AKA Devin the Dad, as a former Hollywood reality TV producer who traded a set life for the stage of parenthood filled with tantrums, snack negotiations, and dance breaks. He's now a full-time content creator, and he captures the hilarious and heartfelt chaos of raising kids in the modern age. Yeah. Let me grab an extra mic.
Okay. Bet. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you guys for coming out this morning. I used to do stand-up comedy, and this is actually more people than used to come watch me do stand-up. So thank you. And you guys didn't have to buy drinks. Usually it was a 2-drink minimum. But yeah, I'm Devin the Dad. I used to be a former reality TV producer for over a decade. I worked on shows like Bar Rescue. Got some friends in the house that I worked with. Animal Planet, did shows My Cat from Hell. Come Dance With Me, where kids dance with their parents, a whole long list. So I did that for about a decade, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall with where reality TV was going. I jumped in right after the writer's strike. There was a big boom in reality TV, and I was having to turn down jobs. It was so busy. It was such a crazy time. You could come up with a show idea, and people would pick it up. It was wild. They were like, you would walk into a room and this is my idea, and they would pick it up. It was that big of a boom, and now we're kind of seeing the decline. And do you want me to just keep going with that?
Keep going.
So I had started, my wife who's here, thank you for coming, Marlene Martinez here.
None of this would be possible.
That is also true. I wouldn't have the children without her. So I had started a fashion blog while I was doing reality TV as like a side hustle. I like fashion, I like to dress up, and created an Instagram blog, and that was kind of the first jump into social media. I'm a bit older, so it also felt like, what am I doing here? All these young kids on social, it's kind of how I feel still now. And I noticed a big shift where marketing dollars were going to social media. We're seeing recently the statistics showing that. Right now, Goldman Sachs just said the creator economy is supposed to be $480 billion by 2027. So the creator economy is continuing to grow. And I saw, there's an opportunity to side hustle, maybe transition into that. And that was at about 2014. Did that as just a side hustle, worked with companies like McDonald's, American Express, Hamilton Watch, traveled all over the country doing stuff. And then the pandemic hit. We also had a kid. And I was like, wait a second, I'm not dressing up. I'm not styling my outfits because someone's throwing up on them, or I'm just working from home. And I saw this shift in just my life. Also in my Instagram DMs from my wife, where she was sending me funny dad stuff, funny parenting stuff, and I saw this opportunity of like, oh wow, I have a comedy background, kind of, you guys aren't laughing that much, so it's like a borderline comedy background. And I thought, I've already built this audience of 20,000 followers on Instagram, why don't I transition and pivot into being a dad creator? Then last year, the reality industry really started to take a slide even further. And I was like, oh wow, the jobs aren't coming anymore. Maybe I need to make a pivot. And I just read in the LA Times that there's a 31% decline from last year to this year in reality TV productions in LA. So that's a huge amount of productions that are no longer shooting in LA. Whether it comes back or not, everyone hopes it does, but I don't think it will. So I made a big pivot, focused in on just doing dad content, funny reels, funny memes, and in the past year have over 100 million views on Instagram reel videos. This past week we had a video, we went to Hawaii with our children, One of them's here who's not listening. And one of our videos went viral, 5.1 million views. We did interview with People Magazine, Today's Show, and I was like, oh, this is kind of the direction that we're going. And since then, we're getting brand deals for snacks, for, you name it, any type of parenting stuff, some style stuff, which I still appreciate. So I was like, this is kind of the direction that I'm heading. So that was kind of like my long-winded intro, and now we can do the Q&A part.
But I mean, I know that was a lot of context, I appreciate that, but like, does it feel kind of like a fever dream, or like, what does it feel like in hindsight? Like, does it feel like it happened naturally? Do you feel like it was intentional? Was it unintentional? And with that being said, like, where do you feel like that transitional pivot came from? Like, was it you feeling vulnerable? Was it you like seeing the opportunity like you mentioned? Or was it like an identity thing? Like, what does it feel like in hindsight?
I think in hindsight, it was twofold. It was a necessity of like, this industry that I have worked in for a decade is no longer what it used to be. So I've got to make some sort of a pivot because I can't just rely on something that's not there. So one of them was a necessity, and then the other was I enjoyed it. I'm passionate about creating content. I love my kids. I love being able to create stuff, and it also is my identity. I am a dad and a stay-at-home dad, so a lot of it is necessity as well as a passion.
Mm-hmm. Cool. With the theme being soft, like what originally kind of gravitated you towards the word? Because we originally kind of discussed two potential other ways to kind of go about it, but you naturally gravitated towards the word soft. Was there anything about the theme in particular that wanted you to talk about a little bit more?
Yeah, I think when you talk about a theme soft, I think gentle parenting is the thing that always comes up. I'm also the softer parent. And I do think that as you said, this is a really tough world that we live in. I don't need to get into it. Y'all kind of know, you've seen it. And I think raising our children in this world is tough. So I think finding ways to be soft with them, finding ways to be gentle with them. I know that there's a big rise of gentle parenting, and then it's like, oh, that doesn't necessarily work. I think there's elements that do work. I think the discipline, the my way or the highway, isn't necessarily the right way. And I do believe I also am a softie when it comes to my kids. So I could use a little bit more harshness with them.
I feel like a lot of us growing up, we model what parenting looks like from our personal lives, from like our own childhood and stuff like that. Is there any aspects of it that you either have learned to carry on or that you've like learned to maybe not bring with you? Does that make sense?
That's a really great question. I think we see what our parents did and we're like, I want to do the opposite sometimes. But I thought my parents did a great job. My dad worked really hard. He was present, but not always there and available, whereas I'm doing my very best to be present and available, which also brings some challenges. And I think just wanting to raise them to be good humans, I think, is the idea. And I thought my parents did a good job with that, and I want to continue with that. But as far as the not being able to express emotions, I know that was the boomer parents. Whoever had boomer parents, there was very much a like, don't have emotions, you're fine. I think that was pretty much what I remember, whether I was upset or fell. It was like, you're fine, get up. Which is great, that's kind of how, so we're trying to change that a bit, but with that comes like, if you're gonna express your emotion, then they like to express it a lot. So there's a balance there of trying to figure that out, where you're like, yeah, have emotions and express those, but not all the time.
With like content creation and also work and home also kind of all being in one, like how does work-life balance work for you?
I don't know what that means. Work-life balance, I think, is probably, for any of you that work from home, that have kids, especially if you have littles, I think the work-life balance is almost impossible. I don't want to say that, but I think it's one of the most difficult things that we are facing right now, because our parents, again, it was, my parents, not to put them on blast, but great. It was like a one income. My dad went to work, my mom took care of us, and they were able to live. Now you're like both parents have to work and you're on how many different apps for your kids. Like my mom sent me to school and was like, when's the next event? Whereas now you've got like Discord and Slack and the teachers have this app. And so there's a lot to juggle as well as work. And I think one of the reasons I've done well and my content has been relatable is because I think we all kind of feel that overwhelming pressure of work-life balance. And I don't necessarily have all the answers. I'm trying to figure it out, and that's why I create content around it so we can kind of laugh and be like, oh my gosh, that is crazy. There's so many apps for our children. But it is difficult, and I think I'm still trying to figure that out. If anyone has an app to help with that, I'll just add it to my phone.
That's a great one. And going back to what you were saying a little bit about, like gentle parenting not always working all the time. Like, how do you set a balance between gentle parenting and like maintaining boundaries or discipline when needed with your family?
If anyone had seen our recent viral video, we went to Hawaii. I think I failed at that. We let their emotion. I think you know your kids, and once you get to know your kids, you have to figure out what's best for them. And I think I don't have the Dr. Becky answer because I'm not a doctor. But I know that you know your kids, and I think trying to find a balance is understanding their emotions and what they need and trying to fill that need for them.
That's so true. Your videos resonate because they feel honest and like familiar. What do you feel like a story or a moment is like truly relatable?
A story or moment that's truly relatable in my content?
Yeah, like because obviously like it resonates with a lot of people because of like the honesty and like familiarity around it. Like, what do you think? Is there like what component of a story or a moment do you feel like is what people gravitate towards?
I think this video right here, if you have not seen this, we had gone to Hawaii and we edited it like a reality show. And I think anyone that has young kids and have experienced this knows exactly this feeling of, it's not just the rainbows and the beach, it's a lot of kids being kids. And I think that's what's resonated, some story like this, and also being vulnerable to putting that out there. And again, that was like, there was a lot on the cutting room floor. That was just all that we were able to capture. But I think that's very relatable to people that have young kids and have traveled. It's not really a vacation, it's a trip sometimes.
It's a work trip. Do you ever feel a tension though between like being like a creator and like a dad? Like, do you feel like you struggle at all with like you being performative for your kids or like being performative for the camera? Or is it like truly come from like an authentic place?
I don't necessarily think I'm the performative one, to be honest, in my household of performers. Speaking of performers. My wife is an amazing performer. She toured with Mamma Mia, and she's a singer, dancer. My children are performers. We just did K-pop Demon Hunters in our living room last night. So I'm like the least performative of all of the family. So I don't necessarily feel a pressure to perform. I'm just kind of capturing in the same way I did with reality TV. I'm capturing the moment and then editing it, putting a storyline together in the same way I did for years.
With it being though so public, right? Like obviously a lot of your experiences as a parent and also your children being publicly like online, like is there a part of you that struggles with like protecting their privacy as well as like their individuality while also still like, trying to make a living from it and like, again, showing what it truly is like? But how do you kind of balance that as a parent?
I think that is a great question. I think that is a tough one that we face. They don't have phones yet, and I know we'll get to that point, and they're not aware. But we do also, if they say stop filming me or stop doing that, we'll do that. But usually they're the first ones. I mean, my oldest will be like, hey, she doesn't even know really what TikTok is, but like she knows we're doing it. She's like, Dad, what about this idea? How about you pick me up? And so they're very much involved with it. Obviously we're not putting like where we're going to school, where there's stuff that's still private. And then I still try and do a fair amount of stuff that alludes to having kids without them being in it. Mm-hmm. But I also have 2 kids that love to perform. And you could do the Disney show route, where then you're like sitting on set as a stage dad for hours. They're missing school, they're missing their friends for like not a lot of money these days. And then also you have a lot of people around them. You know, we've seen the documentaries, we've seen the Nickelodeons, the Drake and Josh, and the things that happen to kids on set. If my kids love to perform, I'd rather, for now, control it in a controlled environment and let us do it together as a family.
I see. Yeah, if at any point in time anybody has any questions or things that they want to add to the conversation, please feel free to.
Yeah, so I think like you really brought up a really good point though about like how reality TV had kind of collapsed recently, and I'm actually kind of curious as well what you thought that the reason was, because I know that like Warner Brothers Discovery went really heavy into reality TV when they acquired Warner Brothers. They were trying to push the reality TV shows, but like I know right now the big thing for creators is AI and the concern about like how is that going to affect the idea of media, what people can create, sort of the idea of the creator economy. And so much of that is automated. Is that something that you've kind of thought about recently? Kind of like the idea of how it's going to affect the media industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Two questions there. I'll kind of hit a little bit of the first one. One of the reasons, or a few of the reasons why reality has kind of gone as the writer's strike was a big effect, and then their budgets are less. The marketing dollars are going to social media, creator economy, they're not going to television. And then the streamers thought it was going to be a big thing, but they're actually losing so much money by doing that, so they don't have the money to put into shows. And then that time when everyone was putting shows out and they would do one season was really expensive. And they weren't getting picked up, they weren't getting the eyeballs. And then at the end of the day, they're not getting the eyeballs. So it doesn't make sense dollars-wise to continue to pump out shows that aren't getting eyeballs or the marketing dollars. Second question, I think it's a tool. AI is ultimately a tool. That's kind of how I see it. Will it replace? Sure, but I think it'll also open up opportunities as well. I know there's a big thing, if anyone's following Showrunner by Fable Studios. They were the ones that did the South Park episode that basically, with prompts, took them 5 minutes to make a whole 22-minute episode with text prompts. I think that's exciting, but you still need eyeballs. I think there's, in the same way that Instagram, most people are viewers and not creators. I think AI is going to be the same way. You're going to have a lot of people viewing it, but not a lot of people creating it. And ultimately, it's just going to be another tool. I don't think Kevin, the dad, is going to be an AI person that's going to replace me. And if he is, maybe we can work together.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Like on the topic of that and like technology and stuff like that, like how do you balance content that feels like authentic versus like metrics, right? Like whenever when anything does hit, like are you ever tempted to like try and just recreate that same thing over and over again? Or are there moments where you just want to make a particular type of piece of content regardless of whether or not how it performs?
My thought process is creating content that's authentic to me, regardless of the metric, if we have fun doing it, and it also is relatable. And there's so much content with kids that it's not like, oh, what are we going to talk about? There's so much there. If it involves my kids and it's trying to push something for a metric that maybe is like, oh, that's a little bit out there, I don't want the kids doing that, then that's where it becomes like, I'm not going to do that. But for the most part, I do it based off of what I enjoy doing, what I feel is relatable, and then what I'm living day to day, not necessarily just for metrics.
Got it. And obviously coming from like the entertainment industry, you probably had a lot of experience of like what works in a traditional landscape, right? Like, is there anything that you've learned independently as like an independent content creator and like as also just like a father that you never learned in the entertainment industry or you just could never?
I think the creative freedom now is so much different than when I was in the entertainment industry. There's so many hands, there's so many cooks in the kitchen with that you kind of are at the mercy of an assistant, a creative exec, somebody noting it for note's sake. And I say that because in this one industry, as a content creator, I'm usually the one coming up with the script, pitching the brand, and 99% of the time the brand is like, yeah, great. And I'll get like one round of notes. And I know one of my fellow producers, editors here, has been on shows where we would get 3 rounds of notes. I worked on a pilot where I printed it out front to back. We had 190 pages of notes. So the creative freedom in that is like, goodbye. At that point, you're just like punching buttons on the computer to address their note, and you have no passion for it. Whereas I feel like that why it's also taken off, to answer your question as well, you see the passion behind the creativity. I think we lost the passion with reality, with the amount of notes and the amount of, I understand you have to have a legal department, but the amount of like noting and legal and no, you can't air that by the time it came out, it was a very watered down version of what they wanted it to be.
Got it. On the topic of like creative freedom, like what does success look to you now then? Or what does success look like for you now, independently as someone balancing family, creativity, and like independent entrepreneurship? Like, what does success look like now than it did, 10 years ago?
Survival? I think success is continuing to grow the brand of Devin the Dad. We have some children's book ideas. I think being able to take my skills as a producer and creating some, there's vertical short form content, there's reality content on TikTok. So I think it's being able to take all of my years of experience and putting it into this medium and continue to grow with it. And then, then once one of my kids is like, hey, I want to tour on Broadway like Mom, then I'll be like, we did it. I'll just follow you.
I want to talk about, obviously you being in your 40s, like, do you feel like there's any advantages to being somebody that's like older? Like, because people always say, I feel like social media is like a young person's game. Like, do you agree with that sentiment? Or do you feel like you have cracked the code or found your own success in a way to make it work for someone who's like, again, pivoting or transitioning in like a later part of their life?
I think social media is definitely a young person's game. Do I necessarily feel it every day? Not really, but it is. But where I think I've succeeded and done well, I say it's a young person's game as a creator. As far as my audience, they're viewers, and that's what brands want. The brand doesn't want a whole bunch of creators because then they have to pay them. Whereas being in my mid-40s and being a dad to kids, the brands want people that are gonna spend money. So they're like, hey, I'm not having to compete with a bunch of dad content creators. Here's 2 or 3, and we know that they're gonna convert. Whereas if you're 19 and 20, every 19 and 20-year-old wants to create content. So how do you decide who to work with? So I find that has been the advantage by being in my mid-40s with kids, is that I've carved out this little niche where I have a lot of viewers and not a lot of competition.
Do you think that trend will continue with like younger people still wanting to do content? Do you think some of those individuals won't anymore, and then there will be individuals that still want to do it like in their 20s and 30s, and like there still will be a space for them as well? Or like, do you feel like the market is saturated for somebody to like start now?
I don't think the market's saturated at all. I think everyone has a story, everyone has a voice, everyone has an audience. You have your certain passions and friends that are going to follow doing what you want. So I don't think it's saturated at all. I think it's going to evolve until AI takes it all over, and then none of us have it. But there is definitely space for anyone to create. It's like the Gary Vee, like just start creating. I know that's his big thing. Create the content, create it. You've got a story, just do it. And I say the same. You've got a story and just do it if you want to.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments they would like to ask?
Yeah, I'm just curious about your creative process. Like, how much of it is it like planning? Like, say you have an idea, like, okay, I have this idea, we should do it in the future, versus impromptu, like on the spot, like we need a role right now. Like, is there a ratio there?
I would say it's probably 50-50. There's never a moment of like, we need to roll now, because with kids that doesn't exist. There's usually a thought that we'll write down, and then if something's happening, we'll capture the moment. But I write everything down, write all my ideas down, and then I do a lot of it in the same way I did with reality TV, is you get inspiration. So I'll get inspiration when I watch stuff, take notes, and then I'll plan out the shoots. And then obviously with a brand, I'll come up with a script, or they will, and then I'll plan for that. But there's a rare is it strictly impromptu, like I gotta film now, because it's definitely hard with kids. But the other day, although when it was raining, I did a video, it was about to rain in LA, and I was like, I gotta do it now. And it actually did well. I was in the moment of like, oh my gosh, I gotta get the cushions inside and cover everything. LA people were like, Orange County people, yeah, that's what I did too.
What's the most like mundane piece of content that you feel like you've made that like you thought it wouldn't resonate, but you were surprised by the reaction and the support that it got?
I would say the highest view, got over 10 million views on Instagram, was me having a child scream, which wasn't them, I borrowed the audio, but I have plenty of my kids screaming saved in a folder as I'm cutting a banana and then having to put the banana back together because they didn't want the banana cut. Like, that's just one of those that, like, one day we like guacamole, the other day we don't. One day they want hummus and we buy a big tub, and then we don't like hummus. So that's one of those that, like, that's an everyday where you will cut it and then they don't want to cut, that it's like, oh wow, that really resonates, that parents are going through that every day of every moment, especially with food. So,
What is it about food you feel like?
I don't know, it's something they have control over. Like, they have control over what they're eating, but they don't want you to do it. So there's a balance, like we're also with the one that's jumping on the couch. We got to put her in the car seat, but we also want to do it ourselves. So they're also trying to learn to do things themselves. And I think there's that balance of like asserting their dominance, trying to figure out who they are, and food is a great one for them to assert that, I want it my way. There she is.
What does being soft mean to you now that might have felt impossible in your 20s or 30s?
I think patience, with children, they teach you a lot of patience. I used to think that patience was a long game, and now I'm realizing that patience is like an every moment of every day type of thing with kids. It requires patience all the time. I thought it was just like, oh, I have to be patient with standing in line at the grocery store, but now it's like I'm learning patience is with absolutely everything, and I think that's something I never realized before kids. And then you see in those moments that you didn't realize before how much patience it just requires living in a community with people. Children really teach you that, being patient with not just your own children, but with everyone that you encounter.
I think we also talked about the fact that like being in the moment, right? Like I feel like oftentimes we have so much anxiety of like just thinking about what to do next. And I think we had a conversation where you shared something about like your daughter's really allowing you to just like live more, or not live more, but just be more present. Like, can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, kids are, especially toddlers that their age that they're at right now, that if you tell them that we're about to do something, that's all you're gonna hear about. So you have to just be in the moment with kids. If you tell them, hey, we're gonna go to Disneyland in 2 days, that's all you're gonna hear about. So they really force you to just be here in the moment now, because that's all that they can really focus on. And it's hard to do, because you always wanna think about, what are we doing next? Where are we going? What are we doing? Whereas they wanna just sing Wicked or Golden, and this is all we're doing. You're gonna put your phone down, Dad, and watch me sing. Okay, so we're gonna do that, or play Wicked Monopoly.
When your daughters look back at you guys' content someday, like what do you hope they understand who you were in this chapter of your life?
The cool dad? That's a good question. That we experienced it together, that everything that we did, we were able to do together. Again, I love my parents and they were very present, but at this age, my children are, my dad traveled and I would see him on weekends, or we would drive to the airport to say hi, and he would get on a flight and he would go, and I would see him once or twice a month. So them seeing that I'm around all the time, which pluses and minuses, but I think they'll look back and be like, Dad was here all the time, which is great. And that's what I hope they see.
I had a question regarding, to drive off the social media question earlier. How much of the content you create is inspired by, social media trends? And how much social media do you feel like you consume? And how much of that is for your own sake? And how much of it is for the sake of the business, let's say, or your own content?
Yeah, I would say when I'm on my phone, I just tell my wife it's research. I would say again, my storytelling, when I worked in reality TV, I consumed a fair amount of reality TV as research to understand the trends, because you can't be producing something if you're not understanding what people are watching. So I do the same way with social, and I would say if there's a trend, I try and jump on 60% of like the big trends, just because it'll push you in the feed. It's also things that people are recreating. And then once you start seeing big creators jump on trends, that's kind of when you stop. You kind of want to jump in before like the big creators jump on it, because then you know it's starting to go down. But I would say 60% of the trends I try and jump on. And then when I'm consuming social, I still am consuming it in the way of like research, like what's doing well. Like I do doom scroll every once in a while, but a lot of it is understanding what's working for others and trying to implement that into what we're doing.
One question I had was, this is not about social media, but just like parenting in general. How do you balance your own identity as a person versus like being a dad? I understand.
That's a good question.
But you like fashion, seems like, but do you get time to pursue your own identity? Or just some thoughts on that?
No. Again, I think the work-life balance, that's something that I wish more people understood before having kids, that your sense of identity, it's a really hard thing to push that aside and just being honest, where you're like, oh wow, my identity is completely different. It's very much not wrapped up in, but it's very much focused on children. So for me, it's definitely something I'm still trying to figure out. I still like to dress well. I don't go to the gym as much, but I did for years, so I guess that's still why I fit and stuff. But as you get older, you have to, also things change, but I'm still trying to figure out how to not entirely lose it. But that's also why the social, as a dad creator, incorporating my kids into what I do enjoy, which is creative content, being a creator. So that's kind of how I've been able to keep the identity alive, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess on the topic of identity, right? Like we were just talking about the fact that you went to like an NBC thing. Like, do you feel like that was for yourself, or was that for like the dad content side?
Oh, that was for me. So the other night, I went to NBA on NBC event up in LA. I love basketball. I used to play when I was younger. So those type of events, anything where I can incorporate being a creator along with basketball or NBA is something that I will do for myself. So that I did for myself.
There's definitely moments of like
Correct.
content that like, oh, I want to do this, not because of like my kids or like the content that I would typically make.
Correct.
So there's still that part. Cool.
Oh, he's got one more.
I did want to riff off the parenting element. I'm not a parent currently, but I'm suspicious, and I've talked to a lot of parents who say, there's a worry about, right, we don't even as adults really understand how to control ourselves with social media, right? So how are we going to provide that parenting to kids? And then on top of that, you have the additional challenge of doing that when your work is centered around that social media. So they're growing up in this technology age where, at least we were able to grow roots outside of technology. How do I know you're saying you don't have phones yet, right? So you haven't quite met that challenge yet, but do you have thoughts about how you're going to handle that stage?
Yeah, my wife and I have already started talking about it because we've already started hearing with the 6-year-old that some kids have phones. I don't know who that 6-year-old is, which is crazy. I think she's just saying it. Maybe it's an older, but I think we have a certain age that we're gonna allow it. That you cannot, it'll be a phone to call or something like that. And it might evolve when she gets a little bit older, but I do find that that's gonna be a challenge. My wife and I are trying to figure that out now and talking about it. They're still young, that screen time is still very much limited, and that's kind of our goal, because when it's not limited, when we went to Hawaii, they were able to watch as much Peppa Pig on the plane as they wanted. There's meltdowns that ensue. So we know that the effects of too much screen time, so trying to limit it. And then it is a challenge. I mean, I'm of the generation as a millennial that didn't have a phone, social media at all through high school. I think my first phone was in college. That's how old I am. So I was like, oh wow, this is a whole new world. So it is a challenge, and I guess when they get to the age when it's the big discussion, my wife and I have to be like, listen, we're gonna go off the grid. No one's gonna have a phone. I don't think running away is the solution, but we still have to figure it out.
Any other questions or comments?
As you mentioned that sometimes you do research, right, and you'll scroll and see what's kind of going on. I'm wondering much competition plays into like what you do? Like, do you feel like you have to compete with other people to generate content that is, that hits a certain level, or do you just kind of like put on the blinders and you just do you? You know what I mean?
I just put on the blinders because there's so many other folks that have larger followings and have been doing it longer and don't have kids, or they've got a whole production studio, that I look at it as just inspiration, not competition. And again, in my space with dads, there's probably, I know a 2, 3 that have huge followings that blew up during the pandemic, and they were posting all the time. So I look at them as like inspiration, like, oh, look what they've been able to do, not competition. Because we're also very different. They live in a different area, they've got more kids, or their kids are older. So my story is very unique, and it's just inspo all the time.
Going back to what he was saying, actually. So there's a startup that I just heard of recently. It's called Moxie, and it's a social media space designed for girls that are 8 to 13. So, but essentially, it's like when social media was created, they didn't think about like how to protect children, really, right? And then like having it so it's a safe, like positive way for them to like develop themselves. It's called Moxie.
Raising 2 girls, that is something I'll look at, because that is something that is challenging for, teens. I know there's teen accounts on Instagram, but I don't think the biggest problem with teens is necessarily limiting what they're watching as what others are saying about them, if they have stuff on social. If that makes sense.
How old are your kids?
6 and 3.
So it's like the girl when she's late, I want to create like
Could you speak up a little bit? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
All right, I could also give you the mic. Let me give you the mic.
What if your girl when she's late, right? She says, "Hey, I want to create some content. I want to do like unpacking. I want to do a video where I play, so other kids can watch it." Because that's like a huge thing on kids. They love to watch how other kids play on YouTube. That's like millions, gazillions of views. Or like she wants to dance at the supermarket, so you film her and then you put this on social media. What would you say?
I would say yes. We've already done a few of those like that, but it's still, I'm not, and my wife and I are not going to let them have their own account. It's still going to be me as their dad. We're not going to let them start their own. But we did one with a Tony's box, if anyone has kids, where she was telling us about her favorite Tonys, but I'm involved in it. Everything that we do is I'm still involved in it. She's not just going to do it all by herself, which I think helps control it, and also lets her know who's in charge. Just kidding, she's in charge. But I don't think it necessarily needs to just be her. It needs to be like in the context of a family, of me being her dad and creating. And I don't think she's the type of personality that's just going to open up toys and play with them. She never has, even as a kid, really played with toys, so that's not the route. And then the dancing route is a fine balance. She's still too young. It can be taken out of context, but it can be playful if we're dancing or doing something fun together.
Yeah, we have one more over here. And then...
Oh, I was itching my head. I mean, I'm a fan. I guess.
No. Oh no, sorry. No, behind you. There was a question behind you.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Thanks so much. I love the fact that you say that when you're creating content, what you're looking for is something relatable and authentic. And to get to the comment about how to control social media with kids, I'm Gen X. And when I grew up, my mom only let me watch Sesame Street and Mickey Mouse Club. And that was it. Oh, and we used to watch Wonderama on Sunday mornings in cartoons. Those were the times that we were restricted. And now I guess, I'm sure there's a discussion about this somewhere, because you can watch everything on your phone. So it really has to do with the medium in which this content is being delivered and how to control that medium, I guess. And I was wondering if you know of any TV with social media?
I know there was just a thing, if anyone follows Dr. Becky, I like to reference her because I think she's doing a great job. She had talked about the kids nowadays don't have to wait for anything. Like when we were a kid, I was a kid, we would talk about going to see a movie or we would rent a movie at Blockbuster, and there was a whole process of going there, of picking out, were they going to have the video? Whereas now, what you're saying is if we want to watch Peppa, it's now. So what we're trying to do and implement is watching stuff together. We don't let them have the phone or iPad and watch by themselves, because that is what we've read some studies causing some of the anxiety. There's a lot of things causing it, but that's one thing. Whereas if you can make it more of a shared experience like we did, when you would go to Blockbuster and it was kind of a family event. So, last night we watched Dancing with the Stars as a family. So if we can kind of do it where we're all present and they're not doing it by themselves, that's one way we're trying to do that. And we've seen some studies and heard about the benefits of that.
Good question. We'll kind of wrap up and then we'll do like one or two more questions. But for people who feel like it's too late to reinvent themselves or share their story, like what would you tell them now, having done it yourself?
I would say it's never too late. I feel like if you want to pivot, if you're not satisfied with what you're doing, or if an industry that you've been in is not going where you want it to go, I think pivot. Now we're at a time where you can, a free app, Instagram, TikTok, it's free. You can download it, you can create content before you walk out there and have people watch it. I think Gary Vee talks about that you could have a video that would get more views than him today. Potentially, the amount of opportunities there are with social media, and you don't even have to put your face. Again, there's the AI faceless stuff. Or you're just creating storytelling with quotes. I think if you want to pivot, I think social's a great way, but it's never too late. I'm 46 with 2 kids, and I was able to pivot. Still pivoting, to say that, but it's possible, and just do it, is what I would say.
Thank you. Sweet. But yeah, we'll do one more here and then we have one more wrap.
Yeah, I just want to thank you at first for your passion and interest and devotion to all of this. It's very cool. And then I was curious also from your perspective. So when you're posting new videos or posts, is there kind of for the viral aspect? Is there kind of a strategy that you've sort of developed, or now you know that there's a certain time or certain thing or certain maybe it has to be shorter or something like this that you've sort of learned, or is there still kind of this uncertainty when you're doing it?
There's not really a time that I've noticed, but the algorithm for Instagram, TikTok, they really want you to be specific. So the more specific I get, I've done a lot of stuff about being an over 40s parent. And that kind of you get put in a lane sometimes, which sometimes you feel stuck, but that's also Instagram knows, TikTok knows, this is the content. You're never going to turn on ESPN and see cooking. So the algorithm is the same way. They want to know what people are going to come to see you for. And so if I stick to the over 40, stick to being a dad, stick to relation, those lanes, those are the ones that really pop off. And I think for most people that really, as you're growing, that's the way to go. Then once you get bigger, you get that blue check mark and 1 million followers, you kind of tweak it up a bit.
Michael, you said there was one more back somewhere? Sweet, and then we'll wrap with this one.
I thought my kid had a question. I was like, what is she going to ask?
So I can relate to really all of your videos. I have tears in my eyes watching them. My 2 favorites are Marlene cleaning the baseboards as she leaves the house, and you're already in the car, with your baseball cap on, ready to go. And then what keeps Marlene up at night.
So I'm your favorite.
Truly, yeah, that keeps me up often too. So I want to know where your humor comes from. Is it in your family, your parents, your siblings, or
Yeah, how did you get into stand-up?
Well, I didn't continue with it, so I'm not that funny. I'm just funny enough. My family, I don't know. To be honest, my dad is an engineer, so I don't need to say any more. That's his humor. That's pretty not. And then my mom is funny-ish, and then my sister She's high energy, so I think, maybe it was me trying to compete with her high energy growing up, but to be honest, I don't know. And to your real question is that next month my wife should be here because she really is the funniest. And I do get a lot of inspiration from her and from my kids. My kids are actually really funny. My oldest is one of the funniest that I've ever met at times. Keyword.
Well, thank you so much, Devin, for your time. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you.